So I guess this is a start of a movie podcast, and we decided to go on Marriage Story, and myself and Ed and Alicia have a kind of a contrarian opinion on the movie. So let's discuss. So Marriage Story is a Netflix special that is the first crossover where Black Widow dates Kylo Ren. So yeah, so thoughts. Why don't you go ahead, Ed? I'm quite curious.
Well, I'm Edward. I'm pretty interested in movies. So, I don't know. I've been following movie podcasts and movie reviews for a very long. Where to start? I would I'm going to say this right off the bat. The acting is not the problem in this movie.
No, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, Scarlett Johansson is a great actress, and Adam Driver, this is probably his best performance. I've seen it by him.
Definitely.
That said, there's a lot of really strange decisions that they make with this film.
Yeah, no kidding.
Most of the frustration is what... Again, it's not the actors, but what their roles are and what they're supposed to do in that role. And I guess story, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. What did you guys think of, like, the beginning? Like, the whole writing part?
I liked that.
Yeah.
I liked that they were writing the letters. It was going back and forth between the two. It felt equal there, but that's kind of where the equality starts to slip a little bit.
Yeah, it starts pretty solid. I agree with that. I think it was nice hearing both sides of what, they complement each other essentially, in that monologue of what they love about each other. And you slowly learn throughout the movie that it's not really, and I'm sure everyone's made this joke, and it's not even a joke, but it's not a marriage story, it's a divorce story. So, I mean, that's really what it is. Which is fine to make a movie like that. And as Ed said, yes, the acting's great and everything, but it was literally infuriating with some of the decisions people were making. By people, I mean, honestly, ScarJo's role, for me specifically, where I felt like it didn't make the most sense. And I've discussed this with Alicia. I said, is this because I have a guy perspective? What do you think, Alicia? And you said, so go ahead and fill that in, Alicia.
Yeah, I said, no, it's not a guy perspective. It's just, in general, there's not much equal grounds there. And I guess it's accurate to real life, especially when it comes to custody, that women usually gain custody of children more often unless they're really fucked up and taking drugs all the time. But I don't know. I didn't like how it ended. I didn't like how a lot of the problems in the marriage were specifically with ScarJo's role, not like her character not being assertive enough to say, hey, I want to go to LA to be with my family, and I want to direct some of your stuff. Like, she wasn't very assertive with what she wanted. And Adam Driver's role, even during the movie, he said that, she didn't vocalize it enough. He thought it was just one of those conversations you have, like, oh, should we move the couch over here? And you never move the couch, stuff like that.
I think the baseline is that they didn't communicate as effectively as they should have until the divorce specifically, when they had that famous fight scene. So communication's really key. And then you could say, well, that's why it's a marriage story. These are young people that got married. They got married very young, and I understand that. And Adam Driver is not completely innocent. Obviously, he cheated on her, and that's what I'd like to point out as well. But it's just so weird because despite that, you could still tell that he loves his kid. You could still tell, despite the conflicting weird feelings, I think he still loves ScarJo, and I think ScarJo still loved Adam Driver, Charlie. But it just... Yeah. Anyway, let's get Ed to chip in. After.
Well, Well, actually, I kind of want to go off the rails just for a second before we get into the meat of this major. The settings, L.A. and New York.
Yep.
Which are two very like liberal places, and I don't want to attack anybody of their ideology, but it felt like the L.A. liberal people, like the movie set people and the producers, everybody was like intentionally a supermodel. Like
everyone was intentionally a supermodel.
Like a super moron. Everybody was just a complete idiot, and I was like, are they doing this as like, Hollywood people stupid? It was really like everybody was so dumb. The director was dumb. The person that was holding the lights was dumb. The person that was directing the
and you're talking about the scene with ScarJo, where they're like, she was like doing this part, and then everyone else,
holding the baby. And I was wondering if they were like making fun of like modern movie makers or what. I didn't really get it. Like it was like everybody was like liberal to the point of stupid. And I don't like to say that because I think like sometimes like some of the stuff they were saying, like, I respect women. I had 2 moms. It's like, why would that change the scenario?
Honestly, it's really funny. I'll say this because I know you're going headfirst into this with that topic, Ed. I think little things like that are subtle in that movie. Honestly, I didn't even notice it until... There's one thing I specifically did notice that I did communicate a little bit to Alicia prior to this, upon second viewing. I think that stuff is subtle, but not enough to annoy me. But I mean, it annoyed me a little bit, but it's not to the point where, like... I'm not like the fucking... If you saw the last... Red Letter Media episode about that redneck freaking out about Parasite. That's not how I am.
No, no, I didn't. I didn't hate it either. I didn't like. It didn't bother me or ruin the movie.
There were parts that were genuinely touching. Really,
I couldn't tell if they were making fun of them or not. The way it was like shot.
I don't think so. I think it was intentional. What I will say is I think the movie is, again, not to be contrarians here, but it is overrated. I think it would have been a decent movie if it ended the way, as selfish as it sounds, is the way I wanted it to. How I thought what was going to happen is they're going to go through... Because throughout the divorce, not the first lawyer, that was Bernie or Bert, when he goes back to that asshole lawyer, Adam Driver's character, and then Laura Dern's character, that lawyer, they were both like shredding each other and almost amplifying the couple's hatred towards each other. And I thought they would recognize and see that, which they did. And they would see that, like, this is more amplified than it needs to be. They come together, they have that fucking freak out conversation, and then they learn to actually like love each other again. And then that's going to be the end of the movie.
Right.
But that's not how it ends. And I can handle a tragic movie, but it's not even tragic as it's complacent to me.
Right. It wasn't a good payout.
No, it's not necessarily disappointed. It's more like if there was like a scale, like it's sort of moving up, but then it stays on that line until the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself by talking about the ending. So I wrote some notes too. So you go ahead and say something. I'm gonna read this for a second.
Yeah. The first like scene that like really got to me was actually near the end, and it's the fight they have in the house. It's funny because I think it's actually one of the best scenes in the movie. That being said, I don't think the arguments were nearly as valid on Scarlett Johansson's side as they were Adam Driver's side. Like, yeah, he is selfish, but like so is Scarlett Johansson. So it's like not a very fair argument.
Well, I think something else to keep in mind is like we didn't see Adam Driver be selfish in most of the relationship because that was off screen because they always did what he wanted to do.
True.
But this goes back to what Alicia said is, you know, I think we would be able to empathize with that if we seen him do that. So that's to, excuse me, let me rephrase myself. For on Ed's part, I think we would be able to empathize with ScarJo's perspective if we saw him being selfish more. The second thing is with Alicia is, again, despite that, anytime Adam Driver was said something like, "Hey, I want to do this," ScarJo was like, "Okay, I guess whatever." She wasn't assertive enough to like bring up and there's probably been times where she has brought up stuff that she's wanted to do, but again, not assertively. And he didn't. I think a valid conversation would have alleviated most of the problem. I mean, then where's the movie? But I don't know. So one thing I did want to add, what the movie does exceptionally well, other than the acting, it definitely shows the horrors of divorce and getting the lawyer set up and all that. Yeah. That stuff was funny and also sad at the same time. Because from me personally, coming from, divorced parents, I should say, that shit was pretty spot on with the child, taking sides with, the child overhearing each parent what they say about each other and then sharing it with that said parent. For me, specifically, I think one of the lawyers said to Adam Driver, like, look, he's only saying these things to please you, which is true because me as a kid, when I was at my dad's, I was a Notre Dame's fan, but when I went to my mom's, I was a Michigan State fan. I only did it to please them. So things like that.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I think it was really trying to focus on California law a lot. They bring it up a few times about how horrible California divorce law is. So I think that was like one of like the secondary messages to the story was like how bad the legal system is for divorce in that state.
Yeah,
it's interesting you bring that up because I have a couple of things to say. This is off topic, but California in general is kind of messed up when it comes to law, even with insurance, because I work with insurance, so seeing California's kind of backwards.
Their laws are really odd to begin with, so it's not surprising.
It's such a huge state too, and they like to let the people kind of decide on some of those things, and it just makes our job 10 times harder in half the case. So I thought that was interesting that you brought that up.
I think a character that won't get enough credit for this film, and I actually think was great, was the second lawyer, Adam Driver's character.
Yeah, you know who that
retired lawyer.
I always forget his fucking name, but he was in the Goodfellas. He was the main character, so it was really funny to see him.
I loved how patient and almost monotonous he was about everything. But yeah, he was explaining, hopefully it doesn't go this way, but yeah, it's probably going to go this way. And it's going this way because you listened to what I said. But you had to do that because you weren't.
Are you talking about Bert or the guy from Goodfellas?
The older man.
That's Bert. That's what you meant by the second lawyer. Excuse me. Yeah, he was funny as hell.
Yeah, before he goes back to the first lawyer. And I think it was hilarious how he kind of was like, we're going to try to avoid this at all costs, but by the way, it's going to happen no matter what.
Right. I will say, though, with the Goodfellas lawyer, I wish I need to fucking remember his name, but
Bert.
Not Bert. That's not Bert.
Oh,
so not Bert lawyer, okay. The Goodfellas lawyer, because that guy's from the Goodfellas. That's the mob movie, the Martin Scorsese.
Older gentleman lawyer.
Yeah. In the beginning, when you watch him for the first time, upon first viewing, for me, it's like, and most people's impression is like, this guy's a dick, because he's going straight for the money, straight for all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And then upon rewatching it, it's like, oh my god, he was right about a couple things, explaining how this process goes with divorce. Yep. He's like, look, she's already gonna plan on taking custody or something along that lines, and then sure enough, that was the case. And let's talk about the absolutely frustrating experience that just because a friend or a coworker of ScarJo's told her to go see a lawyer, she breaks that promise or whatever to deal with it in person. Yeah. And then it goes full circle when they get in that argument. It's like, look, dude, this could have been alleviated when Adam Driver says it to ScarJo. This was the plan in general, to not get lawyers involved. And that's a part where I'm just like, yes, I wanted to fucking shake ScarJo for that. And the character itself. That's
something we should talk about is Scarlett Johansson's breakdown with Karen the lawyer.
The breakdown with who?
When they, I think her name's Karen.
Yeah, that's Laura Dern's. That's the actor's Laura Dern. Well, that's
that first scene when she's talking to her. It's interesting because her entire complaint is this idea that like he never listens to her and never gives her the opportunity. But then she like kind of admits to herself that she never even tried to go for it or never tried to explain it.
Yep.
Right, and it's funny you bring that up because I actually have a note here saying like everything that she's telling Laura Dern, she needs to tell Charlie, Adam Driver.
Yeah.
And then if it's like even like they get into a big ass fight, we saw them get into a big ass fight later, and weirdly enough, despite them being complacent and the ending is just them not together, they're still like respectful towards each other. So it's just like, why couldn't this happened earlier? I don't. It's funny because it's like my issue with the movie is more about the relationship more than the acting, where it's just like, come on, like
like other than like random one-liners that seem to just make people weird. I thought the script and the acting is just like how it portrayed on screen was very irritating.
I see a Ouija on your lap.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, there was some random one-liners that were like really bad, like Scarlett Johansson's sister and stuff like that. Like they probably could have gone the whole movie without even adding her to the. I like totally forgot she existed till this.
That was when she was gonna hand the envelope. I kind of thought about that part. I thought that was a little weak. I think they were trying to be like, haha, quirky, funny way to give out bad information to Adam Driver, and I'm just like, that felt like it's not. It wasn't that. It was like I just didn't care. That's all. Just like, yeah. No, I hear you on that. What else did I write down? Oh, let's talk about that child observer or whatever that profession's called. It is so genuinely funny how true that is. Again, this goes with how good the movie does with how it handles divorce and how accurate it is. The woman had no fucking idea how to handle kids. She's not a parent. You could tell she's not a parent. And her observing the family life, and she's a fucking weirdo. It's like, that was good. I thought that was an excellent part of the movie.
Yeah, that was actually probably my favorite part of the movie, was just that entire 10 minutes. And it just kept
awkward as fuck. It just
kept cycling down to like more and more absurdity because she's so fucking awkward that it makes Adam Driver more and more awkward because he doesn't know how to handle this woman.
Right.
She's just
it's like, would you like anything? Just water. It's like, that's it. And then at the end of like that 2-hour, 3-hour session, she's just like, thanks for the water. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then that part where he cuts himself, that part was so funny. And I think it was like trying to be serious, but I was like cackling. Like,
I don't think it was I think it was meant to be funny. I think,
okay.
I feel that way because it's like, oh my god. Like, obviously you feel bad for the character, but it's still like funny that like he accidentally cut himself by anyway for the viewers. Obviously this is way too late for spoilers, but for the viewers, that's the part in the movie where the kid during the visit for the custody, or excuse me, I'm poorly explaining myself. The woman that was observing Adam Driver and his child was because that was set up by the courts to observe like who's a better parent essentially for custody reasons. And Adam Driver messed up by accidentally cutting himself. He's like, yeah, that was this trick I would show my kid, and I would pretend to cut myself, but then he actually fucking cut himself. And then, so anyway. So I wanted to look this up, and I'm going to do it right now. So you guys keep on talking about this, because I'm going to read this line specifically. So you two go ahead.
All right, Alicia, what you got?
Oh yeah, something that pissed me off was one of the speeches that
No, stop. That's what I was gonna do. Stop right there. No, we will get into that. We will get into that.
Alicia knows it off the top of her head.
No, she doesn't. I'm going to reread it verbatim so we can all have a nice, good old laugh. So, different part.
Oh my god.
Different part.
Well, you can go ahead, Ed.
All right, yeah, it's like the theater people though. They're so. This is where the only thing where I like struggle with the acting was the side characters. They weren't humans. They were just like, I don't know, what do you call that? Like exposition piece type people. They just kind of existed to tell information. Like they talk about the two getting divorced. They're like, oh, it's like my parents getting divorced, but then they're like happy and drinking and like not having a bad time at all. And nor do they care once she leaves. They're just still working at the place, having a good time. It's like I felt like the side characters were not real characters. Meanwhile, the main characters were all of them.
Yeah, they were kind of one-dimensional or two-dimensional or however you want to call it.
Except for the mom. The mom was a great character.
Yeah, for the short I liked the mom a lot. Yeah.
You have anything else?
Going back to the beginning, like, I think the equality slips quite a bit when ScarJo says that she doesn't want to read out her letter to the therapist. Like, I thought that was a little telling of how the relationship went because she wasn't being assertive, and
she was for that part out of no fucking reason. I guess.
No kidding. But then that kind of all went downhill because she didn't want to sort it out amicably by doing the hard thing by writing the letter, and she doesn't want to do the hard thing by being assertive during the relationship, so she just ends up taking, I guess, the easy route by getting a lawyer first and then fucking over Adam Driver with the rest of how the movie ensues.
Yep. So, the famous Laura Dern quote, which at first, upon first viewing, I'm just like, where is this going? And then by the end of it, I'm like, oh, that's so wrong.
Is it so the wrong. Mother, woman, man thing?
Listen.
Oh,
Here we go. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
We don't accept the failing of mothers structurally, and we don't accept it spiritually, because the basis of our Judeo-Christian whatever is Mary, mother of Jesus, and she's perfect. She's a virgin who gives birth unwaveringly, supports her child, and holds his dead body when he's gone. And the dad isn't there. He doesn't even do the fucking. God is in heaven. God is the father, and God didn't show up, so you have to be perfect. And Charlie can be a fuck up, and it doesn't matter. You will always be held to a different, higher standard, and that's fucked up, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, no.
So after viewing that, I was just like, no. The second thing is Adam Driver ends up getting fucked anyway, so that's already proven wrong. But thirdly, let's talk about how most custody cases are won by women 80% of the time.
Yeah,
that is a genuine statistic.
Because seriously, like, even when she was doing that mock interview with her lawyer and she was talking about how she, did drugs maybe once while she was still taking care of her kid, and she would have a glass of wine every night. She would have had to do drugs like every fucking day in order to not have her kid, because when it comes to custody, like Patrick said, women get it 80% of the time. She would have had to be a really fucked up, like, absolutely unsuitable mother in order to not have custody of that kid.
That's the scene where it's like, okay, a little bit of Hollywood got into that script. That's where I was like, no.
Do you think the movie put it into Laura Dern's character because she's supposed to be like the advocate of bad life decision making?
That's what I thought. I thought maybe to the movie's credit, it's not like I'm gonna say like, this is some feminist rhetoric, blah blah blah. It was just more like, because after I thought that was incorrect, it's like, well, she was meant to be a bad character, like kind of not a great person to begin with. So I agree with you on that, Ed. But I kind of think they were still taking that a little seriously.
Yeah, like a grain of truth.
Yeah, just like that other Adam Driver's Goodfellas lawyer who was a dick, but was right about a couple things. maybe they were trying to do that where she's a bitch, but she'll be right about this, except she was totally wrong about that.
Yeah, like we could go into the whole women and men have different standards, which is true in a different story. But like her interpretation of it was just so asinine,
right? And then the stereotypical bash on Christianity thing. I was just like, okay, whatever. Like, and it's not like I'm a hyperbolic, crazy Christian person. It's just like, okay, make fun of the Western world, check. Women have it bad, check. So by the way, I also noticed this on Pawn's second viewing, and this is what I discussed with Alicia prior to our thing. I asked
before you go to that,
sure,
before
go
you go to that, back to what Laura Dern said there. How many people do you know actually like give bad dads a? Because they talk about how you expect men to be bad and you expect men to not be there for the kid and stuff like that. It's like, how many people do you know in your life actually like live by that credence of like, oh yeah, you abandon your kid, but you
right.
I don't think anybody does.
Like, I mean, there's people that do it clearly, but I honestly
not as a regular thing.
A couple of I can think of one friend of mine specifically. I mean, the guy doesn't do much, doesn't make much, but when he was having a kid, he was super stoked. So he wasn't, and that's just a countenance of one person. It just really depends on the person. Do I think it's as bad as what everyone says, where the guy just gets off scot-free and no, I don't. Yeah. I don't think it's as rampant as everyone says so. But even
I feel like in most of our communities that we are in, like if we had a friend or an acquaintance that was a parent that just abandoned their child, we'd probably think pretty negatively of it.
Right. And again, it's depending on the community. Totally different demographics, different communities, different wealth backgrounds. That's a big part of it.
Complicated sociological stuff.
Right. So, and we don't need to get into that over this fucking movie. So that's I don't think that's not really the message of it. But that's a big criticism where I shouldn't say big, but like I didn't that scene was ridiculous. But another thing, I don't know if you noticed this theme, Ed, but something me and Alicia picked up on is I think what this is, because at the end of the movie, Adam goes to go see his kid, and there's another guy there, so that's obviously new boyfriend, right? So she gets back home, and someone says congratulations to her for like getting this part, and Adam Driver made that assumption. She's like, no, I'm actually the director. I can see why you liked it so much. It's like, okay. And then that's when I started thinking, oh, is this about a women in power thing? Like, where she was just she was a lowly actor and she wasn't getting her voice heard, but now and Adam Driver was being a dick, which is kind of a patriarch kind of thing, by not listening to her. But now that she's divorced, she's empowered and she's a director now, and you know what I mean?
I think,
and I'm not trying to go. Possible. I'm not trying to go down that rabbit hole so hard.
No, I think,
but I do think that is subtly intentional, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it'd work if, like, I didn't think Scarlett Johansson was by far the bigger perpetrator of these.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing. This is the part what I was talking about earlier, because near the end of that movie, when his son is reading that letter out loud, and he's reading it to him, helping sound it out, when she wrote that I'll always love him even though it doesn't make sense, and he chokes up, I'm like, that hit me. That's just what I mean. The movie it's just a shame, because when it hits, but then it just goes back and forth, and it's such a bummer. But and that was the frustrating aspect of it too, because I think the point of the movie is like, you can love someone even though it's complicated, it's not meant to be, and it's like, save that 500 Days of Summer bullshit for another fucking movie. I don't know. Because
I actually kind of love that movie in its own way,
and that's fine.
I would never watch it again, but I love it in its own way, like the fake manic pixie dream.
It's been years since I've seen that movie, so I don't even remember what happens. But...
Yeah, I think it's like the idea of the manic pixie dream girl, but isn't actually one. Like, she's actually just a selfish garbage human being, but she has like the portrayal of the manic pixie dream girl, like the girl that'll solve all of his problems. I think that's kind of like the premise.
Okay.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind does that quite well also.
I think Eternal Sunshine's a much better movie, too.
Yeah, probably. Anyway.
I guess one thing we should really talk about, since we're kind of a little further along in this, is like the big scene, which is the fight.
Sure.
The part I really struggle with this is they're finally starting to release what's bothering me. And the thing that bothers me about it is like everything Scarlett Johansson points out about Adam Driver's character, although some of it's true about him being selfish and him not listening to his, you could say the same thing about her. So like, meanwhile, he's pointing out like, you moved to LA.
You could say that about her now, not in the past. But yes.
Yeah. It's like you screwed him out of being able to go to New York and work on his Broadway play, which closed down because he couldn't tolerate it. Like, you moved to LA with the kid, you put him in LA school system, you said that you're not going to come back, and then you forced him to move there for court. It just keeps adding and adding and adding up. And then it finally gets to the breakdown where he's like, you're freaking crazy. And then she keeps nagging on him more. And then he freaks out and basically breaks down, starts crying, saying like, I hope you get ran over, you get sick and ran over and die. And then he basically goes in, it's basically manic depression at this point.
Go ahead.
I think when people will observe this movie, they're going to observe it as like, I can't believe Adam Driver said that. And it's like, that's what people look like when they're driven to their last breath.
That's what I meant by the divorce thing. It's got it very accurate because, you know, he was saying that just out of pure anger and he didn't mean it.
Because he cries immediately.
Right, because after that, he cries and he says, I'm sorry, you know, and I'm guessing because he didn't mean it. But, you know, a lot of ScarJo's decisions, I was just like, look, I know he cheated and that wasn't cool, but like the way he was handling it afterward, it was like one time apparently, and not that it's excusable, but like it's almost like it's not like it was intentional, but it's almost like revenge for this kind of shit that she went through in a way. I don't know.
But she kind of drove him to that point because he was sleeping on the couch and not giving him affection, attention, not communicating. So people have their limits, and I think he reached his limit and had to find comfort in someone else that was close to him. That was the stage manager.
That was a textbook divorce story in terms of like husband makes a lot of money, but he works long hours. He works far away. So then the woman gets a little like, you know what I mean? Like you've heard these stories before and people getting divorces and stuff like that. It's just what's so frustrating is they could sit here and start the movie with complimenting why they're so good for each other and their best traits. And it's just like, you're not going to just recall and remember that. And I really would have enjoyed the movie more if they went back together. Like, and again, I want to preface that, and I've said this already, it doesn't have to have a good ending for it to be a fantastic movie. I've watched tragic movies before. I've watched depressing movies before. But I think there's ways to be more effective about it. And this just felt complacent. Because at the end, Adam Driver's like, okay, this is how it is, essentially, and walks off in the sunset. And it's like, I didn't think that part was very realistic. I thought that was just like, I think it would have been, even if it ended on a note where it's like, well, maybe they'd be together, I'd be a bit more better, but no, it's just like, I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, that thing with Adam Driver at the end where he decides to let everything happen, he decides to move to LA and stuff. I was like, you would have to be such a benevolent person to even tolerate that. Like, she literally closed down your $1 million potential Broadway play over this divorce. And you're like, yeah, I'll just move and be a good dad to my kid. It's fine. It's like, wow, that out of all the emotional trauma and torture and financial trauma she's put that guy through, like, he's pretty good guy to just be like, oh, I accept it now.
Right. He loved his kid. That is a fact. So
yeah.
I also liked his singing actually in that one scene too.
I did too.
About
at the end,
being alive, that song or whatever.
Yeah. That scene made no sense to me the first time, but the second time I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I will say that with Adam Driver specifically, the only time before that movie I saw him as fucking Kylo Ren, and you know, and I know he's been in other movies, but it was just a breath of fresh air to be like, oh, skills, you have them. So
he's actually a good actor. What?
It's not that he was even bad in Star Wars. It's just like I'm tired of comic book laser beam superhero movies. So it's just like, thank you for being an adult and being in an adult movie.
Yeah.
So
well, those movies are so bad anyway. Even if he did have good acting in it, it wouldn't matter. You wouldn't.
Well, I mean, Kylo Ren's was always fine in the Star Wars movies. It's just it was the writing and poor motivations, and most of the actors in Star Wars were fine. Again, it was just.
I felt the same way. The writing was awful in that
just
one.
JJ and Rian Johnson. So anyway,
yeah. The kid too. How old is this kid?
He seemed like he was like. What's funny is I think they wanted him to be like 4, but he looks like he was 7
He's
or
like
8.
8 to 10.
Yeah, like I was like, if he has a reading disability, that's fine. But like, he seemed a little old to not be able to read, and they never explained that he had a reading disability. They're like, oh, he just doesn't try hard.
Yeah, I mean, like, ScarJo said that like he tends to give up early. I think I recall her saying that. Alicia said that the kid was kind of annoying her at a couple times because of his attitude, and I said, well, to be fair, I think the kid actor is fine. I think it's just that he's a kid, so he doesn't fucking know any better, so he's making these decisions that could make Adam Driver look bad.
Like during the observation he was being a little shithead.
Yeah, like talking about the knife trick and stuff.
Talking about the knife trick, and then when he would bring up something that he liked, he was just like, oh, I don't like that anymore. And I'm just like, it makes sense because kids' interests fluctuate, but that pissed me off.
I will say Adam Driver's patience in that, I'm sure there's really good dads that exist, but like his like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I feel like if it was my dad, it's like, too fucking bad, we're gonna do it or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But he was just like, okay, I guess, and he was super sad about it. Like, the Halloween thing, where, like, ScarJo had all the fun with him, but here, have a tired kid and attempt to go have fun on Halloween trick-or-treating and fucking... Yeah, so that was depressing.
Have a second Halloween. You can't fucking do that because Halloween is like a very specific time set, one day of the year. You can't replicate that bullshit. Oh, that moment made me mad.
Yeah, I thought it was really weird that like Adam Driver called his kid Honey too, because like he seemed like 10 to me. If he was like 5, that'd be different. But I guess you can call your kid whatever you want. I guess it's not an issue. Right. It's just kind of an abnormal nickname.
I sort of noticed that the second time. Older child. The second time, but I mean, So
like it doesn't kill the movie or anything. I just thought it was kind of an interesting.
It's just refreshing to talk about this where everyone isn't praising it. I don't know, like.
Right.
Again,
there's things to praise about it though.
Yeah, I guess I don't want it to be a negative trip, but it's just an awfully strange case of a movie where it's clearly the music is great, the shots are great, cinematography's great, acting's great. It's just literally just some random story moments where I think my biggest complaints are like the ending and just random sprinkles of things where it's like that didn't make any sense for the character. You're just being, it's mainly ScarJo where like you're kind of being a bitch.
Yeah.
I would actually argue, I was talking about this with Alicia, where you're looking for the quote is like it wasn't the acting of the main characters that I had problems with, but the secondary characters that only had like 1 or 2 lines.
Yeah, they were quirky.
Like there is this one, I can't remember his name, very famous actor.
He's the inconceivable guy.
Yeah, and
he's like, go out there, sleep with women,
men,
anybody, and I'm like, what a random fucking thing to say.
Right.
I guess it's fine.
I think it's meant to be funny. I
guess it's just like, and then when he's talking to the woman that he had the affair with, like I felt like she wasn't really much of a real person either. She's like, why? You're just torturing yourself. You slept with me when you. She sounded like a robot.
I thought she was fine, but I think was a little unrealistic is that like I thought that she was just way too cool with the situation of him saying no. Like
that's what I mean.
Yeah, I think she probably should have been a little bit more like psychotic about it.
Yeah.
Or just slightly annoyed. Anything. Like,
Yeah. She was just like, okay, whatever, and then that's it. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, people like that are a little bit more on edge.
Yeah.
I'm the chillest bro around. Don't worry about it.
We can fuck or not, whatever. We're cool, man.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the directors with Scarlett Johansson's first gig, when she's doing the photography, when they're walking with her, and she talks about like the writing, and they're like, "Oh, you want to be a writer?" Like, I'm like,
they were super on board with it. It was
like,
weird.
yeah, without any. She made one suggestion, and they were sucking her dick.
Yeah, like the side characters were just fucking weird, and that's why I was wondering if they were making fun of them, because I don't want them to make fun of them if they're just quirky characters.
Is it that they're bad acting, or was it just that it was odd dialogue?
Poorly written, I think.
I think it's more odd dialogue than bad acting.
Well,
because like the dialogue in the main story is great. The dialogue in like these like one.
I mean, that's the emphasis. I'm guessing that's what it is.
Maybe. That's why I was wondering if they were making fun of them, because like they were just always saying really stupid or random things.
I mean, another thing I'd like to add is about the lawyers. Because Laura Dern at the beginning was like, we'll just make this as gentle as possible. And I knew even upon first viewing, like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's Laura Dern.
Right. Yeah.
She's always mean now.
Right. And
longer the days of Jurassic Park Laura Dern.
Oh, God. But, yeah, the lawyers really weren't good people in that, which most people already know that about lawyers, so I don't know. They really amplified the hate between them. I'm retreading water, so does anyone else have anything else to add about Marriage Story?
They were able to communicate better after they got into the thick of it with the lawyers, because that's when they had their giant fight. After having the really catty lawyers kind of not making up things about each other, but making each other look really bad.
Right.
Like, I think it kind of put more tension on them to the point where they were just like, okay, we kind of have to talk about this now. Which, if they would have just done that earlier, maybe they could have fixed their marriage.
Right.
I think that's just kind of like the hilarity of like the human condition, though, is like we're just really bad at solving things when we need to.
Right. And so that's where I can say like, oh, this doesn't make sense. It's like, yeah, well, they're also a young couple and they probably do stupid shit all the time. It's just, and I get that. Like, everything that's happened, it's not that it's unrealistic, but as a movie in general, as I'm viewing this, it's just like, it's just what kills me is at the end when he reads that thing and she says, I'll love you even though it doesn't make sense. And it's just like, just fucking be with them. Just be with each other. That's all that's all. That's all I have to say really about that. I think that was the most disappointing aspect of it. Yeah. The first time, Alicia as my witness, the first time I ended that, I'm like, that was fucking dumb. And I was just like, I was a lot more emotional about it. Just like, oh my God, that was so frustrating. And I even said, look, it's not a bad movie, but God, I don't like that kind of payoff. So,
those type of payoffs are hard, especially when like, it wasn't even like that. It wasn't negative enough.
No, it wasn't.
To give you that kind of like emotional feeling towards it. It was just kind of like a doll.
It was just nothing. Just yeah.
It's like, oh, it's where we were at the beginning of the movie.
Yep.
Except divorce.
A little bit worse, yeah.
Yeah, except they just don't hate each other as much and they have a lot less money.
Yeah. And now,
mainly Adam.
Mainly Adam. Because he lost his Broadway play and has a loan that's like, what, $1 million?
Yeah. They are not equal in this situation. That is for sure.
I thought it was selfish that ScarJo, like, she didn't force her mom to take out a second mortgage on the house, but obviously the mom wants to help to pay for the lawyer, but I thought that was pretty selfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else is to say about this. To be honest,
I think that's it. We did a pretty good job of covering it. For what I can.
Good first attempt. So I think maybe what we can do now is discuss what next movie we can watch, and then see what to talk about then. Because our original idea was with me and Ed was to watch Well, first, what was it called? The Perfection, and then the Handmaiden.
Yes.
So.
Do you want to do the Perfection again?
Well, we can. So I just got to find a way to get you to watch the Handmaiden.
Yeah, Agashi. I know it's Handmaiden, but like in Korean, it's.
Yeah, it's an excellent movie. It's made by the same guy that did Old Boy, which is a really fucking good movie. But yeah, I wouldn't mind watching The Perfection again to have a good laugh, because holy fuck.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna watch that movie again. I watched it twice. And...
That's fine. Or we could come up with something else, but regardless, I just gotta
I'll talk about it. I just don't want to watch it ever again.
No, that's fine. It'll be fresh in my memory, and then you'll remember. But yeah, basically, there's a reason why I want to watch those two movies in particular, because after Alicia watched The Perfection, and we both went, this is fucking ridiculous, I was like, because there are some moments in there where I'm like, they're totally taking this from The Handmaiden, and it's a much better movie. Alicia, so as soon as she was done with The Perfection, I'm like, we're watching The Handmaiden right now. And then she was like, wow, that was really good. So
all the concepts from The Perfection that I thought were kind of interesting were just taken from The Handmaiden. Like, that's it.
So it's funny you bring this up, because it's actually reminiscent to the last Red Letter Media episode I watched about Parasite. They said,
I watched that too.
So they were talking about how Parasite's about classism, which it is. But then Mike said, can you imagine if an American made this movie? It'd be so not subtle, in your face, just like, rich people are literally Satan, blah, blah, blah.
I think this is becoming a thing.
Well, like, that's what The Perfection is. Perfection is literally the American take of The Handmaiden, and it's fucking atrocious. No subtlety, no nothing. That's literally that situation with that movie.
Yeah, like you guys both know that I study Korean and stuff.
Yes.
But like I'm not really big into the pop culture of Korea as much as I was when I. But like when you get into like the Bong Joon-ho movies and stuff like that, like they're all really good. Like they understand like long-term storytelling. They understand world building that has just been completely lost in modern American.
Well, that's what's so funny, is because, again, back to Red Letter Media, Mike was talking about how, everyone's making this speech about like sociological, political problems, and here comes a guy from fucking Korea that's just like, hey, I appreciate this and I like movies. Yeah. Things that you should probably talk about at the fucking Oscars. You know.
And then he showed the, like, Parasite's a really good example. Like, he shows the negative aspects of, having these people living in the ground that are suffering so the middle class and upper class can thrive. But then he also shows that, like, the lower class isn't exactly as great as they seem to be.
I mean, there's a reason why it's called Parasite. They are living parasitically. So I didn't feel as if it was like the rich are total fucking evil. They had their fucking issues, but so did the poor guys. And
I want to find that video that Red Letter Media kept playing where he was like freaking out.
Oh, the redneck.
Yeah, it was like, I watched that movie. That movie, I didn't feel anything majorly negative.
No,
one way.
It was a good movie.
Yeah, like every movie he's made has been good. He made Oakjar, right?
Yes, but I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen any of his other movies. I would like to go see Mother, because
he made The Host, I think.
Did he help make Snowpiercer?
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Snowpiercer wasn't my favorite.
Well, it's kind of Americanized, if I recall, but I don't. Well, not that's a problem, but
the execution is just not like. I don't know. There's a lot of messages that just didn't.
I've never had any interest to go see Snowpiercer, but yeah, I think this is a good way to end it. So I think we can each just give our overall thoughts, but I think it's unanimous. Again, for me, the ending was just.
You want to do like a 1 out of 10?
We could give it a score, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if a score justifies this movie, so I'm not going to give it a score. You guys can. But for me, I just think that, look, I'm making this paint out as if it's the worst ending ever. It's not. It's just a lifeless ending. It's just stagnant. Stagnant is a good word. Stagnant ending.
Oddly enough, it probably would have been better if it ended with Adam Driver singing.
Yeah, right.
Like I think if it would have showed him like come up with like a sense of relief, like an expression that showed that he's finally dropped the weight, and the movie would have ended. It would have.
They wanted to make it equal on both. So no, I'm serious. They to have Adam's perspective and ScarJo's perspective. I think the goal was to make the situation be on a level playing field, but again, it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
So, even though that's what their attempt was.
All right, Alicia, your final thoughts.
Well, to give it a number rating, I would probably give it a 7 out of 10. Because I think most of my gripes are more with the characters themselves and how they were written, rather than like the actual cinematography and the movie itself. But I think that's just the characters being the characters. They're just being assholes, and there's not much you can do about it. But yeah, I'd say the ending was a little bit lackluster. I would have liked to see them try to work things out, because it doesn't feel like a marriage story at that point. It just feels like a divorce story. So the name wasn't very fitting.
I mean,
but
that was probably the intention.
Yeah, I think those are the biggest gripes I have.
Honestly, if I was doing like a grading rubric, let's say I was like teaching like a 101 film school, I think this would score really high, like 7, 8. That being said, like the points that get taken from it it doesn't add up to what is trying to be portrayed, I guess is what, like I understand it's trying to play the whole equality game. It's just not there. Like, it feels really like one person got screwed very hard, and there's no repercussions for that, or like justification or anything, which is closer to real life, I guess. But it just doesn't feel good to watch.
No.
And then the fact that it tried to portray it as like equal, that's probably where I'd take the points off from, is like it didn't feel what the message was trying to.
I wouldn't say it's like boom and his life's over, but it's more like here's ScarJo, here's Adam. That's what I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like ScarJo kicked him down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I'd end it. That's my final thought.
Main takeaway: it didn't work out between Kylo Ren and Black Widow. So bummer summer.
What a great crossover too.
Yeah, I know. All right, so damn. I'd like to talk more, but I think that's it. So
I want to see the sequel where she fucks over her next boyfriend.
It goes back with Adam Driver.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. This has been fun. So I'm gonna hit the stop record, and then we can. We're good. Wow. Impressive. You made it through the entire podcast. That's very, very endearing, and we appreciate it greatly that you're interested in our ramblings about movies. So there in the corner, we can thank Alicia for those cute little caricatures of us. They're so cute. We have a link for the our YouTube podcast here. You're already here, so that shows you found it. Congratulations. And maybe a Spotify. I'm just going to point here, hoping there's a Spotify link somewhere, maybe. Anyway, we did come to a decision of what we're going to call the podcast. We're going to call it Cinematically Incorrect. That's the only thing we could really think of. I mean, we've had other ones, but they were kind of lame, and hopefully I don't look back at this 10 years from now and thinking that this name is lame as well. So, moving on, and thanks for watching. Look forward to more in the future. Thanks.